capital, not on work, on the capital itself through this mechanism of interest. And this mechanism of interest is not only applied to how businesses run, because they're owned by people demanding interest, demanding profit for making no contribution, just being a surplus holder, but now these holders of surplus IOUs have now extended that because they've suckered governments into borrowing tons and tons and tons of money. And so now they have a hold on future labor that they can tax. I mean, come on. And they don't produce anything. They don't do anything for the value they're taking out of the system. And so you ask the question, you pose the question, well, you think it's preposterous that the losses, you would accept the loss years, right? Well, why don't I ask you the same question with inheritance? Why is it possible for somebody to inherit the profits of capitalism, to give the profits to their children, but how come they're not allowed to, are not required to give their children the debts? How come the debts all of a sudden become the public's responsibility? How come the public has to pay the debts? How come the public has to pay for the bankruptcies, the consumers and the public? Why are they paying for the bankruptcies and the failures? Why don't we impose that on the inheritees? Or at least make that part of inheritance tax. Pay all bankruptcy, all the failure that's paid by the society. That means the bank bailout, for example. All that money should strictly come out of inheritance taxes. It should come out of the profit money. Okay, because the profiters have never passed on their fucking debts. They've never paid their debts. So make the profiters, the risk takers, actually take the risk and impose the risk on their beneficiaries of the future. So let the inheritees who are gaining from the risk taking pay the liabilities of the risk taking. Let them build the safety net for the inheritees. Okay, it shouldn't be the public's responsibility. You can certainly agree with that, can't you?
No, of course you wouldn't support something like that. And I know I'm talking fast, but you just made so many ridiculous claims. You talked about the fact that the only reason why people become rich is because they basically exploit the poor people. That's the really only way that they're getting rich at one time. Well, if that were the case, then America would have the poorest people on the planet because of...
No, that's a silly argument, okay? Because obviously we exported our slavery.
The most number of billionaires. Now, I know what you're going to say, that, no, we're really just exploiting people of third world nations. That's incorrect, too, because our largest trading partners are like Japan, Canada, and other wealthy nations.
Oh, come on. And other wealthy nations like China, right? Is that going to be your argument? I mean, what a silly fuck. I can't even believe you resorted to this. The American industrial complex, since well into the 60s even, okay, has been sitting there and exploiting the cheap labor in South America, and then that ran out, I mean, as far as it could go, and so we had to keep looking for another market to exploit, and then when we found Asia, it was like a gold mine, another gold mine it hit. All right, and to sit there and deny that fucking reality just makes you such a little fucking weasel. To sit there and say Japan and China, when you know that Japan, when we were doing business, real business with Japan, it was because they had lower labor. Okay, and now that Japan has become the same as us, is stuck in the same boat as us, okay, that now we're just importing through Japan from China, and you goddamn know it.
And you think if the best way to get wealth or become richer is by exploiting poor people, then we would just be always exploiting. We wouldn't be trading with wealthier nations. Now the nonsense is that...
Well, that's just such garbage anyway. It doesn't matter whether we're trading with a nation. We're not trading with a nation. We're contracting with employment, and we're contracting with environmental regulations and other regulations that protect water and air and all this other stuff that we care about. And that's what we're trading with. And so we're making a better bargain in another country. And you know that 90% of that better bargain has to do with the fact that we're not having to pay workers. And you goddamn know it.
The benefit of profit, think of profit as the price you get for efficiency. And with efficiency, you get lower costs in innovation. And
that has nothing to do with what generates profit in the first place. It's not necessarily efficiency. It is control of a market. It is precise, advantageous manipulation of a market even. All right, so even the word efficiency implies something it shouldn't imply. And there's nothing, and efficiency at the cost of dignity is useless. Obvious slavery was hugely productive. It was hugely efficient, okay, by your standards. All right, but it, obviously was beneath a standard of required dignity and acceptability and ethics and morality to justify the gains we could rape from those people. And that's all they were. They were rape gains. And this is what we're doing in China is nothing less than rape gains. All right, got to take a break. Thank you very much. All right, back to where we left off.
It only happens in free market capitalist societies, which increases the standard of living for all people. If you look at systems like, I'll use a democratic system because people don't like when you bring up the Soviet Union, but the same thing happened in the Soviet Union. Like India, where you had democratic socialist nations under Nehru, where profits were basically not allowed. the cost of goods were actually less affordable for the poorest people in society. And the reason.
Oh, come on. I mean, you're going to use these lame excuse kind of like, okay, let's take some experiment that's been completely politically broken to pieces. I mean, the Soviet Union, before the Cold War, okay, had made substantial gains. Sputnik, I mean, come on, get real. All right, they had a hugely productive economy in terms of where they started from and where they got to in a short amount of time. Now, India, obviously it has all kinds of population issues, all kinds of surplus population in some regions, the cities versus the rural areas. There's just no way to sit there and apply an economic model and say, okay, it's a failure because we did an experiment in India. I mean, that's just so friggin' lame. And why don't you bring up Cuba? Is Cuba some sort of petri dish experiment on communism or socialism? We're not going to sit there and count sanctions and politics and all the other crap that interfered with that economy. I mean, there's no, well, anyway. It's very unrealistic. I mean, even when you think about military expenses can be justified when you're winning wars. But if you're spending on military just to defend your country, then you're going to lose money. And obviously, we've had a aggressive military, not a defensive military. And we've been selling military to a bunch of little despots who have been manipulating their people, and so we can make a profit on our military. Where small nations aren't going to have that capacity. They're not going to have the resources to make F-15s. And so that's a monopoly business right there. I mean, there's just so many factors you're just simplistically pulling out of the equation so you can make this bullshit black and white argument that it has no credibility because you haven't done the experiment. You've judged the experiment. It's not just judging a book based on its cover. I mean, it's just drawing conclusions based on something stupid, like you did an experiment with rats, you put rats in a box, and 10 years later all the rats are dead. And you're concluding, well, the experiment just failed, all the rats are dead. Yeah, well, it's 10 years later, you dumbass, the rats died.
Because without profits, there's no incentive to innovate, there's no incentive to keep costs low, there's no incentive to make everybody wealthier.
Well, again, everybody wealthier. That's not how the system works. Obviously, when wages are being driven down by your efficiency equation because there's more surplus population that is made available because you're importing more labor, or you found some other country to export the labor to, and so now you can extort a lower wage out of workers, then they're not getting wealthier, are they? No. The standard of living hasn't increased for workers, for blue-collar workers in this country in the last 50 years, 40 years anyway. It's decreased. And that was another point I wanted to make on that. Wealthier. Well, they're not getting wealthier, but anyway. Damn it, missed it.
Profits. When you gave the example of someone making a profit, those profits are signals to other people in the society that they should be producing those types of goods and services because there are profits to be made.
Yeah, right. What a pile of crap. Yeah, of course, there's obvious, inefficiencies you could see. You could see something that was really horribly inefficient, a little town business, and they were way overcharging. They had 17,000 swimming pools and yachts that they were making off all the profits they were gleaning because they were running the business so sloppily. And so, yeah, might say, yeah, I can outdo them. But what happens if all of a sudden your competition is William Randolph Hearst? What if he's a guy who doesn't mind losing $1 million for 100 years? Okay, and he'll say it right to your face. I don't mind losing $1 million for 100 years. You want to try being in competition with a guy who can lose $1 million a year? I don't think you want to do that. I don't think you want to try to take on Google in the market right now. Do you want to sit there and try to get all this venture capital, persuade all these people to invest and say, yeah, let's build ourselves a big giant search engine and try to compete with Google? Because you know they're going to use every trick in the book to make it impossible for you to make any money. If you try to offer something for money, they can afford to make it. They can afford to give it away for free for 5 years because they have a huge war chest. First off, a huge big pile of money sitting in the bank, so they can afford to lose money if they have to. But they can afford to manipulate where they make their money, so they can lose money in one part of the business and make a ton of money in another part. And by keep doing that, they can just keep discouraging anybody from trying to pick at any one little piece of their business model. And that's the reality, asshole. Well, sorry, ad hominem. This whole idea of encouraging people to be innovative, we know where the innovation comes from. It comes from the people doing the work. It comes from the people who are being paid. You pay them, give them incentive to be innovative, to invent the next transistor or the next modified something or other, the next super cooling magnet or something. These rich people aren't coming up with this crap. Okay, scientists getting paid a wage in a business are the ones coming up with this crap because they have incentive for their own advancement in the company to come up with good ideas. If you pay people to have ideas, they'll have ideas, and that's the way it should work. And those are the people who should be getting paid.
Hey, as more people go into that system or that type of industry, because they see those profits end up diminishing over time because of competition. But the reason why profits are necessary is because it gives people the incentive to be the first on the scene and take risks.
Well, it's just silly, all right? You could just have a business who's a public interest business. We could set up a public library business and give it a generic mandate. Come up with efficient ways to do, say, three things, three businesses: insurance, I don't know, make a car, and pick something else, golf clubs. Yeah, and you could just give them the mandate to come up with a good product at the best price, marketable, blah, blah. Give them the agenda and pay them to do the job, and don't allow them to become a government union. Right there, that's going to kill it, right? So don't allow them to become a government union. And yeah, you'll be able to run the business without any owners. There'll be no need for anybody to own the business, okay? The business will have the mandate. You'll pay competent people to do their job. There'll be managers. There'll be all kinds